guess we can go ahead and kick it off. You ready to go?
Let's go.
All right, Joshua Shore. Joshua or Josh?
Josh is fine.
All right, Josh Shore.
I have Joshua on my author page, but yeah.
You know, Joshua makes you sound more distinguished.
It does. Well, if you want to do the extra syllables, then take it.
Take it. Well,
Yeah.
I appreciate you coming on the show, man. Tracy Offutt put us in contact together. He was my old sergeant major at 1st Anglico. He's been on the show multiple times. Old school guests probably want to see him back again. It's been a long time since he's been on, so he'll have to come on. But, you know, he's a good connection to have. Yeah,
he's awesome. I saw him a couple of weeks ago when I was out in Camp Pendleton, and we grabbed dinner with another guy that I served with. It was awesome. It was just great to see him. I learned a lot more about the deployment and stuff from his perspective, then. So it was cool.
Yeah, because you were probably a junior Marine, right?
Oh, yeah, I was a boot. It was my first deployment. I had just picked up, I picked up Lance Corporal, and he had just picked up First Sergeant.
Yeah.
So we were,
So he was moving into that world. I will say this. This is a really cool story about Tracy, and then we'll move on. When I first started the podcast, I think it was when it was audio only. I did one of my episodes. I'm pretty sure it was audio only. I did my episode, and I was like, hey, I'm going to be moving. And that's when I moved from Oceanside down here to San Diego. I was like, hey, I'm going to be moving, so there may be like a week or two where there's no episode. And he heard that. I released it. He heard it and was like, hey, man, I heard on the podcast you're moving. Do you need a truck? You want to borrow my truck? And I'm like, dude, who does that? He just called me out of the blue like, hey, bro.
He's amazing. That's him in a nutshell.
Yeah.
He's always looking out for his Marines.
Yeah, he's good people, man. But
yeah.
I appreciate him putting us in contact. Let's get into your story, though. So what year did you end up joining then, and why did you go into the infantry?
Yeah, I joined I did the delayed entry program in 2003 because I was still too young. I think I turned 17, and then that's when I joined the DEP.
Yeah.
And I can't remember how long you had to wait to go, so I had to wait until that time frame. But I knew I was going to be a Marine, ever since I was a young kid. And my family has a history of military service. My dad is a Marine, and so it was just kind of a natural, progression for my life. But I joined as soon as I could. My parents had a sign for me. I actually planned my high school credits to graduate early, so I had enough credits in January that I graduated high school and then went to boot camp in February of 2004. So that's
just right into it, man.
Right into it, yeah. And the war was going on at that point, so naive me, I was like, well, if I'm gonna be infantry, because that's all I wanted to do. If I wanted to do anything else, I was enjoying the Army or Air Force.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was just like, if I'm gonna do this, then I need to do it as soon as I can, or I'm gonna miss the war. Was my fear as a naive 18-year-old.
That was everybody's fear, dude. In 2006, I was like, I'm gonna miss the war, and then it ended up taking me 3 years to be able to deploy, and it was 2009. I'm like, I'm gonna end up missing the war.
Yeah. Luckily, it went on forever.
Yeah, it just kept going.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy though. It is. Looking back, would you recommend most people do that? Join at 17 and a half, essentially 18, and then go right into the military? Or do you think it'd be smarter to live a couple years and then go?
Well, it depends on what you want to do, right?
True.
If you're, in my opinion, and this kind of goes into another avenue, but it covers it, so I'll kind of touch on it. And my wife's been with me since September 11th, 2001. We started dating on September 11th. It was such a shitty
anniversary,
day.
But
Well, I was just it's such a shitty day. I remember Congress was singing "God Bless America" on the TV as I'm on MSN Messenger, and I'm asking her to date me. And I was like, well, if she says yes, then something good can come out of this day. And so anyway, we've been together for a long time. She's seen all the stuff that I've been through, and she's been through it with me. But she's like, what would you say to our kids if they wanted to join? And I said, be an officer. So going back to your question, I think, having not been an officer myself, and seeing a lot of my officer friends now after being removed from it, and the connections they've had, and just some of the experiences that they've had, if they're not wanting to stay in for a long period of time, I'd consider the officer route. So go to college, go to ROTC, get into an ROTC program as early as you can, and start that route. But if you know you're going to be an enlisted Marine like I did, just go in. Why wait? I guess high school, in my opinion, it was was an experience, but I knew what I wanted to do with my life. And so I just went right at it, and I don't regret that because, I got a little bit of a head start time-wise on life outside of the Marine Corps. Had I wanted to stay in, I would have been a very young Marine throughout it, but that would have been even beneficial for me in that way. So
yeah, you would have retired when you were 38.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah.
Nice old man, 38.
I know. And that's hilarious too, because I remember some of the old men in our platoon from Ramadi, they were 24, 25,
Yeah. It was weird being in the Marine Corps long enough where people started calling me old. I'm like, dude, I'm 27. Like, what are you talking about? They're like, all right, old guy. And I'm like, what the fuck?
How long did you serve?
12 years.
Okay. Yeah. That's a good run.
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't bad. It started off rocky, but it wasn't too bad. Something that the reason I ask you about if you would come in later is I wanted to come in right out of high school as well. I was a senior when September 11th happened. Okay. And I got arrested. I got in trouble. And that got kicked down the road and ended up taking me a few years to actually be able to join. And but in that period, I got to kind of like live. I got to go. I lived on my own. I had an apartment. I paid bills. I had a job, and I did those kind of things. And I think that honestly made me a little bit more prepared to transition out because I had that life experience beforehand. Because like in your case, you go straight from your parents' house in high school, straight to boot camp, and then straight to the fleet. And then you do 4 years, you may be in charge at some point towards the end of that. But all the way up until that point, someone's telling you what to do all the time, where to go, where to be. And I think a lot of times in that case, guys are so used to that. Like there's someone there, there's the food's going to be there. This is where we're going. This is where the ride's coming from. It's always prepared. You don't worry about electricity bills or anything like that in the barracks. I think some of those guys have a hard time when they get out because this is now the first time they've ever been asked to kind of take care of themselves. You know what I'm saying? In a different way than they did in the Marine Corps.
Totally. And I hadn't really given much thought to that because my experience was different from that, being that I got married in 2005. So about a year and a half into my enlistment, I got married and we lived off base. So that helped us because my wife moved out and we lived in San Clemente, and so I had to pay bills. I had to do, put food on the table for both of us. I had basically the thing I appreciated about it is that being married so young, my wife and I were just in it together, and it made the Marine Corps seem more like a job than it was necessarily like my entire life. It was nice to get a break off base, going back to my own apartment and living that kind of normal life. Now, in between all my deployments and everything, my wife would move home to live with her parents. But it was nice kind of having that practice to be a normal human being outside of the military. Before I got out. But I could definitely see how someone would have kind of a culture shock, on top of getting out of the Marine Corps, which is its own beast, to now have to have all the responsibilities. That you don't really think about and you take for granted while you're serving. So.
Yeah. Who do you call to get your electricity turned on in your apartment?
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you do? Yeah, like mail. You used to do mail call, like they just bring you the mail. Now it's I think that is. I don't think people take that into account enough. I think we should give in service, troops should have more responsibility. Yeah. I think. Like when you go to the barracks, I think you should rent your barracks room, and it should just be like an apartment. Like you're gonna go, you're gonna do a walkthrough, you're gonna sign for it. I think you should pay for your portion of electricity. You're getting all the government's gonna cover it, but you got to pay for it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like do those things.
It's like your uniforms, right? We all got them in boot camp, and then you realize as you're in boot camp, it's like, wait, I have to pay for these? I thought they gave them to us.
Wait, I only got $1,000 for 3 months of work.
Yeah. Well, but I will say this: like having had I worked like 4 jobs in high school, and they were like pizza delivery and all these random things. But, my dad had like a metal shop, so I had different irons in the fire back then. But when I got to the military, that was some of the most stable and the most income I ever had. So I had nothing really to base it off of. Mm-hmm. For me, it was like, ooh, fun money, until I got my apartment and then had to do that stuff. so from your perspective on it, having lived life outside of the Marine Corps and then came back into it, I think I could totally see it's only $1,000, but for me, it's like I get $1,000.
Yeah, I will say once you start getting the normal pay, I mean, there's always a lot of talk about how troops are underpaid and this and that, and in some cases I agree. I think combat pay should be higher, but I will say that like when you look at the salary, you're looking at the base pay and you're just negating the fact that like a junior Marine doesn't have to pay for anything. His food is covered. His rent is covered, like all of that. The only bills that he will probably have is his cell phone and then maybe a car payment if he decides to get a car. Some guys don't get a car, and if you're getting $600 a week or whatever, which doesn't sound a lot to someone working a normal job out in the real world, but you don't have any bills. You know what I'm saying? Like it's. People don't take that into account. Again, I think obviously we could always pay troops higher, and I always think that combat pay should be much more. I think what was it like $250 or something? It
wasn't enough. Yeah, as you reflect on it, being like out and working in the professional world, it's like, holy shit, we didn't get paid anything, to go out and get blown up.
Yeah, yeah, it's a low paying, high excitement job, kind of.
Yeah.
It's not too bad. And then, like you mentioned before, if someone decides to be an officer, officers make so much more money, I think a junior lieutenant makes as much as a gunnery sergeant.
Damn.
So
yeah, I haven't even compared that. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's what it was when I was in, because I looked it up. I was like, damn, a lieutenant, like a new lieutenant makes just the same amount as a gunny. And I'm like, damn, that's and then, you move up to like major and then higher, you're starting to make some really good money there. But what did you said you got married a year and a half into the Marine Corps. I imagine your command had some ideas about that since you were still pretty young.
I was trying to think about that because I remember some of my junior Marines when I was in at MARSOC. We got back for a quick in-between deployment kind of thing. It was like a week, and I was like, jokingly, I'm like, don't do anything fucking stupid. Don't get married. Don't do anything like that. And one of my younger Marines comes up to me, like as we're about to go to Afghanistan, he said, hey, I got married. And I was like, you're fucking kidding me, right? And it was almost like a punitive end. Where I was going to get married, I think everyone knew, they all knew my wife from before, knew I had a girlfriend that was a longtime girlfriend, and it was something that we talked about with my command, my staff sergeant, Santiago, we called him Poppy. We had talked it through, and there's those warnings of like, hey, don't do anything stupid, but I think they just appreciated that I gave them a heads up beforehand,
Yeah, I would say if I was a team chief or if I was in the command, they technically can't stop you, but they can give you some words of wisdom. And I've definitely talked to plenty of junior guys, and I'm just like, hey, man, the reality is the odds aren't with you. When you're 19 and you're talking about getting married, it's like, bro, the odds are not with you. You need to know that up front. Make smart decisions. I can't stop you, but think about what you're doing because this is like a real thing, And then, the odds are not with them. So there's a lot of guys that make a bad decision.
She's the right one, right? They're always, she's not going to leave me. And I remember like, I never had worries about it from my end necessarily because I was the piece of shit. Not my wife, and yeah, I was, dude. I was, man, it could have been so much. At one point we were dating, and I started dating a married woman, and we like broke it off. My wife and I. She wasn't my wife at the time, but girlfriend, fiance, whatever it was. So I wasn't a great dude. I had all these fucks that went out the window right before I went to Ramadi, and that was kind of the mentality that I had, which I can't change it. So I won't say necessarily like, oh, do I regret it? I can't change the past, but it just is what it is, and I'm grateful that my wife stayed, with me or wanted to marry me. And then midway through my Ramadi deployment, I told her like, I expected I was going to die, and I was just like, I'm not going to get married to you. And she didn't take that very well either, understandably.
Yeah,
and she was planning the wedding at that point,
Oh man, so, yeah, that's probably not the message she wants to get. It's like the reverse fucking, Dear John letter. Like,
it was too, because we had at the government center when we did 4 days patrolling, 4 days at the government center in Ramadi, and so I set it up to call my fiance at the time, and right before we went to the government center where we had no phones, no way to contact anyone, and I called her and I was like, I don't want to get married anymore. I'm gonna die here. Thanks, bye. And I hung up and went to the government center, and all my peers, all the other Marines are like, what the fuck were you thinking?
That's crazy. I'm thinking that right now. What were you thinking?
Yeah, I know. I wasn't, man. I was like, I had accepted my death at that point. I was just like, fuck it. Why even like waste time?
You have, I mean, you get such a different mentality when you're overseas, not just on something like that. I can't imagine, when you're facing death all the time, your mentality changes, obviously. But just being on a deployment in any capacity, you start thinking different. You start thinking like, I don't know, people start buying stuff online. People start making all these crazy plans.
Yeah.
And like, oh, when I get back, I'm going to be doing this. And then all of that goes out the window when they get back. The like, I got super jacked on deployment. I'm going to keep this up. It's
like, exactly.
Pizza. Fuck it.
I was just saying, like, then there's fucking In-N-Out and pizza. Like, good luck. And then alcohol, as much as you can buy.
Yeah. So when you're on deployment, you're not thinking right. So I can see where that would come from, where you'd say some stuff that you didn't really mean, but that's pretty fucking hardcore.
It was, man. And like I said, my friends, that were serving with me were like, "What the fuck were you thinking?" They talked to me and said, you need to call your fiance and get it back on. So I called her when I got back and explained my mentality, because at that point we had lost a lot of guys and a lot of people were getting injured, and I so she understood. My parents were there to kind of help talk her into my crazy mindset at the time, so it worked out, but
you got a good one, man. Fucking hanging around. She made it happen.
It's funny because when people read, some of the people that know me very well and know us have seen us like throughout our life, because we started dating when we were 15, and they've read my book and they're like, they come back with some feedback and they say, your wife is a saint.
Yeah, sounds like it.
All right.
You piece of shit.
Yeah, exactly. Another way to phrase that is, you're a piece of shit.
How dare you?
Why did you come home?
Man, again though, like that deployment stuff, it gets pretty hardcore. It gets pretty serious. So it's like, what are you gonna do? I don't know. You can't explain that mentality to people that haven't like been in a situation where it's pretty hardcore. And even me, I've never even been in something like probably you face in Ramadi. So it's like that. It's hard for people to really understand how. I made a clip, and I put it out where I was talking about how people kind of forget about what this is. And at the end of the day, I'm out here trying to kill a guy and he's out here trying to kill me. That's it.
It's cut and dry.
And when you get down to that fact that this is for real and there's literally someone hunting me and I'm hunting them, that kind of changes a lot of, and not just thinking about it, but you're in it. You know what I'm saying? I want to get into that kind of mentality that you had. Let's talk about the deployment. Before that, let's talk about your training. What did your actual MOS end up being? How was the training? How do you think it prepared you for that deployment? And then we'll get into it.
So I went in as 0311 and went into I actually went into the pipeline at SOI to do recon. And so I got accepted into that pipeline, and I went to pre-BRC. That was in summer of 04. And at that point, going back to our mentality of, the war's going to be done. When I first got to first recon, I was there for one of the Bronze Star award ceremonies and listening to what some of these dudes were doing from that. They were there for the Generation Kill deployment. And so, like, I'm meeting a lot of these guys and seeing them. And one of the senior gunnies at pre-BRC was like, the war's going to be done by the time you are done with all your training to be a recon Marine. And at that point, as a stupid 18-year-old, I was like, well, that sucks. Like, why the fuck would I go through all this training when there's still a war, And so I dropped, and they told us, if you drop, you're going to go to 1-5, and they're going to go to the Triangle of Death. And I was like, sweet, that's where I want to go. So I dropped, and a bunch of us went to 1st Battalion, 5th Marines, and I got assigned to Alpha Company. And the training for that, all the basic infantry stuff, from SOI, from boot camp, marksmanship, all that. When we got to 1-5, it was heavy in, hey, we're gonna go back to combat, because this was 1-5's third combat deployment, and they had just gotten off of the Fallujah, the first Battle of Fallujah, and so there was a lot of salty, two-time combat vets, and the first guy that the first Marine that got killed, Lieutenant Childers, in the entire Iraq War was from Alpha Company 1-5, and so all these names are being thrown out there, and a legendary kind of unit to go to, and so it was like, we have to train to go to combat, and it was your standard company exercises, weapons familiarization. We were trying to train about IEDs, and they weren't even that common at that point. In the war, and they didn't come really prevalent until we got into Ramadi. They were already hitting 2.5 and everything with those, but we didn't really have much for IED training other than like fishbone or herringbone your vehicles, and don't be in the kill zone.
Yeah, get out of the kill zone if someone gets hit. Get at least 50 meters away, I think, or whatever it was.
Yeah, and then they're like, and then herringbone, and then they're because that was before all the secondary ones were really coming into play, and so. Oh
yeah.
So stop your vehicle and wait.
It was much different in Iraq. The IED threat was much different in Iraq than Afghanistan, because you guys were facing, actual weapons, actual artillery, mortar shells, stuff like that, strapped to guardrails, buried, all that stuff. Afghanistan was all homemade stuff, so it was really hit or miss on how effective it was. I mean, obviously it was really effective in some cases. So, but it was I hear guys talk about, oh yeah, we had 20 155 shells daisy chained down the road. It's like, holy shit, like that's fun. Yeah. Just to imagine, that's crazy.
Well, and that's you say that because I had I was in Afghanistan in 2007 and 2008. I was in Helmand, and we didn't get hit with one IED. I don't think our entire company did.
Wow, really?
Yeah, it was all, and that's crazy because we all drove around Sangin. We were in Sangin driving around, nothing. We were with a Green Beret team, and they hadn't even seen them yet. And we were down in like Nowzad, all the the southern part of Helmand. Didn't hit one IED. It was all mortars, small arms fire, RPGs, and that was a completely different experience from what Ramadi was. Ramadi was we drove around. I got blown up with a 155 round the night or the day after I got blown up with like a 120 millimeter shell, and this is when they weren't taking guys off the front, they were just like, hey, you got blown up yesterday, that's cool, get back out there.
There's some Motrin and water, bro. You'll be all right.
Serious.
Your head's still a little rattled. No, you're good. All right.
What'd you say?
Damn. Yeah. Do you? So, when you say you got blown up, how close were you?
Let's see, the first one on April 19th of 2005, I was probably like 30 feet maybe from it, and it was enough to concuss us, and it may have been a 155 round, I don't know. It didn't feel as big as a 155 because we took that the next, like 11 hours or 13 hours later. And that one was, the 155 was like 8 feet behind me, on my same side of the vehicle, and that was exposed above the ground, so it was the full blast of a 155 round, and it killed two of my friends. We all got knocked unconscious, got hit in the leg. Mm-hmm. So it was, it was just a wild experience with those, and I got blown up with 2 hand grenades from our own dudes.
Oh my God, really?
In Afghanistan, we had one. It was a crazy situation, but what had happened is like and I can go back into this if you want to. I don't know. Do you want to stick on Ramadi for right now?
Well, I want to hear about these hand grenades while we're on the topic.
All right. So we were moving in. My buddy got shot in the leg. We were trying to find him, and the Taliban were fighting from these like trenches that they had used for water, but they were fighting. It was like a trench line, in the middle of the city. It was like a wadi, but it was even like more of a trench. And I don't know if they had dug those on purpose. They even had like hiding holes in them, which was crazy. But so we were trying to find my buddy, and I had the 18 Delta with me. This fucking amazing dude. He ended up getting the Navy Cross a couple years after we left there for another deployment he was on. So this,
as an 18 Delta, you got a Navy Cross?
Yeah, he was with the Green Beret team. I think 2 of the guys got killed, and he went back and like he was rendering aid to them under heavy fire, himself having been blown up as well. So it was a pretty awesome. He's a pretty awesome dude. He's an amazing guy.
That's crazy.
Most humble dude you'll ever meet. He's just a very good dude. But so we're with him trying to get him to my buddy who got shot, and what had happened is it was like mud walls and almost like a labyrinth as we're moving through it, and we got to this metal flimsy door. Those little flimsy doors that are like 5 feet tall.
Yeah, like sheet metal essentially.
Yeah,
the corrugated tin.
And we get to it, and he's going through first because he's a shooter just like all of us, right? So we've been taking turns going through the door on a lot of these, just so you're not having the stress of that for the same guy every time, right? Mm-hmm. And so we're pushing through, and he goes through, and I have to put my head down to get through the fucking door. So I go down, and he bumps back into me, and I'm like, what? And he's like, there's 2 fucking Taliban right there. And I was like, well, we can't fucking go back through the door now. And so we frag it, throw the frags over the wall, and we go through the door after they blow, and there's a fucking RPK drum and an RPG sitting there, and they had turned and burned, and they went to the trench line that was open. We didn't know there was a trench there yet. And what had happened, we realized later, is that they were pinning down my buddy and his team from this corner. They had them pinned down on their side, and then there was another Taliban team on the other side that had them pinned down on both sides. Basically, they couldn't move. Mm-hmm. And so when we popped the corner, my buddy pops the corner to look down the way, and he takes 2 rounds right away, like pop pop, and he's like, shit, they're right there, they got us dialed in. And I'm like, fuck, get away from that. They obviously had it, and me being a lot taller, I walked up to the corner and I popped it to look, and I'm like, where are they at? I'm looking down this alleyway, and I'm like, where are they at? And as I'm saying that, the wall beneath my face like blows away.
Oh, shit.
Comes off, and the round somehow hit. I saw the round like hit right here, like right outside my vision on my peripheral, and it blew everything into my face, and I just like pulled away. And I was like, fuck, they have us dialed in, guys, and they're like, I saw there's this half wall, and what had happened is our guys were fighting from behind that half wall, and the last person that had popped the corner that I was on and that our team was on was shooting at them with RPG and RPK fire. And so the Marines that were pinned down assumed that the next person that would come across that come around that corner was the same team, right? And so I take a frag and I throw it down, and it blows, and I'm holding the corner now. And my buddy has a 203, and I'm like, there's a half wall. And I'm trying to explain this to him as I'm holding security on it. And I'm shooting the top of this half wall, trying to keep heads down. And I'm trying to explain to my buddy as I'm doing this, that's right behind me, my buddy Matt Cook. And I'm like, hey, I want you to shoot your 203 at this half wall. You're going to pop the corner, we're going to run the rabbit, and I want you to pop it. He's like, okay. And I'm like, get ready, I'm going to pop the corner with you. We're both going to pop it. So I came back, and I popped the corner, and he stepped out to shoot it with his 203. And in front of me, it's probably like, I don't know, 8 feet in front of me, there's just like, oh shit, there's something there, and it blew up. Oh. It was a frag. And so I was partially protected from that wall, and Matt, my buddy, he got like the whole force of the blast, and somehow, like I turned around, I picked him up with like super He-Man strength, and we're like dusting each other off, and I'm like, are you good? And we're looking at each other, and it didn't feel right. Something felt really wrong, because at that point, we'd fought a few times with Taliban, and they were never that consistent with their fighting. Like, they would have already ran. Mm-hmm. And we're like, this doesn't feel right. I'm like, get everyone away from the fucking corner. And so I back us all away. I take my team, and I told them, I got on the radio, I'm like, who's in contact right now? And there was a couple units. We had our captain was in contact, and then my buddy Kurt, who got shot, they were pinned down, and I think it was Vincent got on the line, and he's like, hey, we're in contact right now. I'm like, okay, this sounds fucking ridiculous, but we need to do something. I'm like, I need you to pop your head over or around the corner from where you're at, and just see if it's Taliban or not. We're going to do the same. I don't know if we're in friendly fire or not. And so they're like, okay. And I go 1, 2, 3, and I look, Doc had taken that corner. He's like, I'm going to take it, and so I see Doc pop the corner as I say 1, 2, 3 on the radio, and his shoulders drop, and he walks out into the middle of the hall, in the middle of that corridor. And I'm like, oh fuck, it was our guys, and they blew us up with a frag, you know.
Dude, you guys are so lucky you didn't kill each other.
Dude, and that was my first thought. I was like this hopeless feeling of, oh my god, how would I like in all this, because they're still getting shot at from the other side, and it's like in all this, my biggest like thought was, I don't know if I could have lived with myself if I had shot my own guy, and I don't know if they would have felt the same, you know. Like luckily, I don't know how Matt and I didn't get hit with the frag from one of our hand grenades. It's not like it was a Russian one. It was a good, American frag.
Freaking American.
Yeah, good American frag that just sucked, apparently.
Well, I've through my years in the military, I learned that ordnance doesn't always do what you think. And the dust that it creates is way more dramatic than the effects that it actually has.
It's so true. Yeah.
I've seen guys literally... we were in Marja, and we had this guy who had I think he had just set off an IED, or he just buried an IED. I can't remember. Maybe he was shooting at I don't even remember. And we had blown his friends up with a Hellfire, and now he's running away, and he's just running. And while he's running, we're setting up another Hellfire shot.
Yeah.
And he just keeps jogging. He keeps jogging, and they shoot the Hellfire. And when a Hellfire shoots, it doesn't go as fast as the speed of sound. So you actually hear the launch. They can hear it before it hits. And he was jogging, and he heard it, and he you saw it in the video, he put his head down, and he started sprinting real hard. And he got just in front of where it impacted. And he only got injured. He had some shrapnel in his back and in his ass. We actually medevaced him out. See, we take care of the Taliban fighters too.
We did.
But it was like moments like that, because for a second he's covered in dust. It's like, oh, got him, and then, oh wait, he's still alive. Holy crap,
Yeah, it's weird how that works. You have, I think, especially with film, right? Like they show grenades and how they explode, and I remember
movies
throwing
are
my first frag in fucking SOI. It was just like, oh, that was louder than I thought it would be, but that was it. Like, where's all the fire in the?
No fire, no flames.
Yeah.
Michael Bay needs to start.
Exactly.
Apparently, there's a new grenade out. Did you see that?
I did. I just saw that. Yeah, I'm curious to see. It's more of like a concussive grenade than it is.
Yeah, I think it said it was more of a thermobaric kind of deal.
Yeah.
Than actual.
That'd
frag.
be wicked too. Fuck that.
I wonder. I wonder. I'd like to see one, and I wonder if there's any video out of it being thrown yet.
Yeah,
it'd be interesting.
I don't know.
They made it weird shape too. It's like a can with a cone on the top, almost like a flat bottom. I like the baseball shape. It's classic.
You gotta
it's easy.
You gotta cup it and get it going.
Yeah. Pop the top.
Pop the top.
Man. So let's go back to Ramadi. So we've been talking about a bunch of other stuff. So you get sent to Ramadi. When you get there, obviously you already mentioned that you'd been struck by a couple IEDs and stuff like that. But when you get there, what were you told were the enemy TTPs? Was it the IEDs and stuff? And then tell us about kind of what you experienced with enemy resistance. Obviously the IEDs. Did you get into any firefights? If so, kind of what was the enemy using, their composition, their weapons, and stuff like that?
Yeah, it was so getting there, we had again OIF-1 and OIF-2 vets, and a lot of those guys were from Fallujah, and so there were all the stories that we were hearing from their deployments and their experiences that we were just absorbing, trying to collect and learn from. And so there was a lot of expectation on us new guys of like, you better not be a bitch, and you better be able to fight alongside us. Don't fuck this up, and don't get us killed, and so it was interesting because I was talking with another guy about this, and he said, when did I have that oh shit moment? And it was really when we were going from Camp Ramadi into our FOB, which was at Hurricane Point, right where the Euphrates splits off and goes around the city. That's where Alpha Company was. And when we got on the trucks to go there, and all the senior Marines that were giving us shit and like laughing and joking, like they became stoic and like super hyper focused, and everyone's head got really far down in the vehicle, and it was like, okay, like they're afraid. I probably should be afraid now,
Yeah.
And it was quiet. We got there in February, and it was pretty quiet until I want to say April, which was nice for a unit transitioning in there, because we we were able to learn from 2-5 who we were relieving. You know, and I remember sitting and talking with some of the other Lance Corporal saw gunners from 2-5, and they were just like, don't put your sling on. You better be ready for, you know, when you hop out of the vehicle, if you feel weird, just put your saw in condition 3. Or sorry, condition 1, you know. And so it was like all these little tips that we were listening from them on, you know, the calm before the storm. And April really started kicking off. And that's when I think we got, well, end of March, I think we got in our first gunfight. I was on top of a bank, and this IED triggerman blew a Army convoy that went through on Route Michigan, which is the main street that went through Ramadi. And my buddy Marty Mortensen and I, you know, I think we hit him. I don't know, because we were going to go check and see, you know, the dead dude, and it was the middle of the night. But one of our other saw gunners had an ND right next to the lieutenant's leg, and obviously the lieutenant was super pissed. And he's like, we're not fucking going there. We're going right back to the fob. And I was like, shit, you know? So, but that was kind of the first experience with that. And that kind of was, that was the theme throughout the whole deployment. It wasn't like the Taliban. I had a lot of respect for the Taliban after fighting them compared to who we fought in Ramadi, because Ramadi, it seemed, were either foreign fighters that came just to get some experience on a trigger against Americans, or to actually kill us, and a lot of them were getting paid, you know, $100 to blow an IED on us, and they didn't really know much about it. They didn't even plant it half the time. So it was a lot. It was like fighting cowards a little bit, and which was really frustrating, because when you're patrolling the city and you have locals saying there's no Alibaba Ramadi, when you're getting blown up like moments before, or someone's in contact at that moment in a different area, it's hard to have compassion for the locals. It's like, fuck you, you know there's bad guys here, where are they? Mm-hmm. And so, like, you know, and that even came out with our first firefight. The first big one that we had was in the city, middle of the day, and we were sitting in the back of these farmer armored Humvees, we called them, but they were like the pickup truck style Humvees, you know, with the benches in the back. Yeah. And then they just had like welded armor up on the sides of them, out of sheet metal, out of steel, you know, and it was really just like shit done. And we actually had to find like a bar, like a wooden a piece of wood to put through the bars in the back of the doors to keep them from like flying open as we're driving. So it was like, it was shit, dude. And some of them were so heavily loaded with armor, because this is when we started learning of the threat that IEDs were posing. Is they were doing, the Marines were doing anything out of desperation to keep from getting hit with shrapnel from the IEDs. And so when we got all of 2-5's trucks, they weren't ready to have the amount of weight that were put on them from all the steel. And so some of our Humvees would only go 25 miles an hour, even though you're at like 5,000 RPM or whatever it was.
Yeah.
You know, so like they were so heavily loaded, we were just not ready for it. And we did definitely start seeing IEDs in April. You know, some of the units I think got hit with prior to that, but April was when they really started using those against us. And I mean, there's nothing more helpless, and at that point there was nothing more helpless than sitting in your vehicle just wondering when it's going to come, you know. And now that I see like the war in Ukraine, and I was in Ukraine last year, and to experience like the drone warfare, that's a completely different mind fuck than IEDs, because they are IEDs, but they're directed and they're accurate, and they're flying. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I would not want to be in that. I mean, all the drone stuff. I remember when we first started them. I mean, when it's all our fault, right? Yeah, exactly. I remember when we started using Switchblade in Afghanistan, and that was kind of the first real iteration of one-way drones, you know, going to blow something up. And then from there, insurgents just like, well, why don't we just use a DJI drone and get this little ring box? I think they started using the for photographers or people that are wanting to do a proposal. You can go on Amazon and buy this really cheap connector to your DJI drone that holds a ring box. Yeah. Coincidentally, also can hold a hand grenade. And then if you modify it, you can attach a mortar to it. And they started doing that and started making those where they were just dropping ordnance. And now we've moved on to suicide, like these one-way drones that are just smoking people. And it's, I mentioned it on another episode, like, I would hate to get killed by a drone for the fact that, one, it would suck because what are you going to do? There's not really much you could do there. Two, is it probably had video as well, so there's likely that your death is now on 4K on social media somewhere. And it's like, dude, do you really want, like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's a lot more of a psychological war in that sense, where you can actually troll like the families of the person you just killed by having their face out there, and it's just, it's effective, but I look at it and I'm like, fuck, man. How are a lot of these both Russia or Ukrainian, like if you want to say the healing process from that, or just like the time after that, like they need to be ready for the amount of like problems that could come from that. So.
Oh yeah, I mean, and drones are becoming more prevalent just in everyday society. We're having Amazon and DoorDash, and everybody else is starting to deliver with drones. And if you come back from a conflict like that into a society where there's drones flying everywhere, just that noise would probably be like, I don't know.
I can't imagine.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I just wouldn't. Ugh. It all, war sucks, man.
Yeah.
It's just not. We keep making ways of making it worse and worse. I think one of the worst things about it, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on this, is one of the worst things about the whole drone warfare and it being all over the place now is how much the average person is consuming like war footage, deaths, war porn, if you will, and how desensitized it's making like society. Whereas normally you would never see something like that, and if you wanted to for whatever reason, you'd have to like seek it out. Now it's just part of some of your algorithm. It could just show up in your Instagram feed. I don't know.
Yeah, I grew up on fucking LiveLeak and
Ogrish.
Ogrish. Yeah. So I mean, from my own experience, having seen a lot of combat footage from what was available back in the day, back in early 2000s, and the violence and everything, I think it does desensitize at some point. Same with the violence in the video games. The ease of what it is in a game or a simulation, or when you're removed from it, when it's not a family member, when it's not a peer, it's easy. And I remember thinking, like, I was mentally ready. I thought I was mentally ready for combat. And then after my friends started dying and started getting injured, it was like, now this is much more real than I thought it would be.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was that, like, oh shit, I don't know if there's ever going to be a way to prep anyone mentally for that, because it's all fun and games until your friends start dying, and then it's like
the facade of safety like really goes away.
Yeah, you think you're indestructible as a 19-year-old, as an 18-year-old, until you find out how quickly you're not, or until you find out how you are. And I remember thinking, like, okay, I could never be taken prisoner by these terrorists. I'll never be in an orange jumpsuit. And then I got blown up my first time, or the first time I was like knocked unconscious from it. And I was like, oh, that's how they get you. If I would have been launched from the vehicle, somehow survived, they very well could have taken me. And to have that vulnerability, that realization of, oh shit, like you could actually, get so fucked up, and then wake up in an orange suit, it's kind of a sobering realization. But
yeah, I think the first time someone gets killed, I mean, I had a buddy who got killed. I was still getting my shit from SIF, and I was, and he was like the class ahead of me. So when I joined, I was a mechanic, and he was a class ahead of me. And when I got to the fleet, his best friend, we were all mutual friends from boot camp and stuff. He's like, hey man, did you hear what happened to Bailey? And I'm like, no, dude, what happened? And he's like, he died. And I'm like, what? Like, what are you talking about? I just saw him like a month ago, Yep. And he's literally been in the fleet for maybe 2 months. And he got killed at Lejeune. A 7-ton ran over him in the field at night. Yeah. and that's when you're like, oh shit, that was my first like, okay, well, things can happen, even as a mechanic,
Yep.
and then when I lat moved, and then, once you get into actual fire support and stuff like that, who knows what could happen. I've had rounds blow up near us. I've had shrapnel skip by us. Like, the facade of safety goes out the window pretty quick.
Yeah.
But yeah, dude, that's when you were talking about you carried the saw when you were in Iraq?
In Ramadi. Yep.
Did you guys have the full up saw, or did you have the parasaw?
Parasaw.
Okay.
I love that thing. We used to joke because I'm so tall that I could probably try to make like a leg holster for it, because my thigh is longer than, or just as long as the saw. So we would joke like, oh,
how tall are you?
I'm 6'7".
Holy shit!
Yeah.
You didn't have to do the pits in the rifle range, right?
Yeah, I did, but it was, I had my first experience with that, obviously.
Oh, so. I thought that was like 6'5" and above didn't have to do pull pits.
I was in the pits. If you weren't supposed to, I was definitely put there.
They were like, fuck it, keep your head down.
Yeah. Don't be a bitch.
Dude, I would see every once in a while, I'd see somebody that had the like full saw, and I'm like, oh, that sucks.
Yeah.
Like, even the parasol gets annoying, obviously, right? But
I love that thing, man. Like, I loved it because it was so small. Like, I remember we'd be in firefights, and I would just rock out of the corner and just like hip fire that fucking thing, and it was just tiny,
What did you? How did you carry your ammo? Did you carry the full drum all the time, or did you?
I had the nutsack, the little 100 round nutsack on it, and then I had 400 rounds total, so two, pouches for them for two 200 round drums, and then my buddy would carry another 400 for me, and we'd easily go through a lot of that in some of the gunfights we were in. And that's what I was going at with that 7-ton thing with the pickup trucks. Was our first firefight. I got way off fucking track there, but we were in the back of one of those trucks in our first gunfight, and I remember the rounds just started coming in. We didn't know where they were coming from, and people were just all over. And it was almost like it wasn't the same as Saving Private Ryan. It wasn't a beachhead. It wasn't anything. But the doors in the back were just getting pelted with rounds. And we're like, okay, where the fuck how do we get out of here? And so we all just dismounted over the front of the vehicle and over the sides, just like dumping yourself out of it. It's like, get me out of this fucking death box. And so like I remember running down, trying not to fall on my face because, when you're under fire, things move a lot slower. It's a weird experience. And everything feels cumbersome, It's like, oh, fuck, my gear feels wrong. And so I remember, like, almost falling on my face, jumping off of the front of the Humvee as we're slowly moving forward, trying to find, somewhere to take cover. And so we were just running through the streets, and it was just chaos. It's like, where the fuck are we getting shot at from? There's people fleeing. Who's the bad guy? And so we ran down the street one way, and then our squad leader, Sergeant Laws, he's like, we're going the wrong way. Let's turn around. And so we did this like big loop as the rest of the team, we all kept running. It was like a weird loop instead of stopping, Yeah. We got to the top of this 8-story building, and my buddy Morgan and I get up there, and he has a big radio with a whip on it. And we come up on this roof, and we're talking. I'm looking at him, and a round cracks right between us. And it's like, oh shit, now what, And so then you just start shooting everything. It's like, fuck it, At this point, there's a gunfight going on. I'm shooting everything, and it was just a crazy experience, it was chaotic. It doesn't make sense. Nothing made sense. It's like, where's the enemy? It's not like the range,
Oh yeah.
Where's the Ivan? He's not moving.
Oh yeah.
So,
yeah. I mean, that's some chaos right there. People running around like going crazy and stuff like that. Because I imagine
civilians.
Yeah. When you were in Afghanistan, obviously that's way more country, where you were
it was
at.
rural.
Yeah. I remember, they get out of there. For people that haven't been to Afghanistan, usually, if they can, if an American force moves into an area, what we saw was the Taliban would fly kites, and they would signal each other with kites and stuff. And then if we moved into like an area and they were planning on doing something, you just see all the women and goats and stuff just leave that area. They'd come all out of that little village area, little whatever you want to call it, hamlet, move out of that area because they're just like, all right, we're not in this. Get all the kids and goats and fucking get out of here.
I remember one of the firefights we were in Afghanistan. It was the village of Urmuz, I think it was called. And when we got done with it, like we fucked up a bunch of dudes. and pushed them out. And we looked up on the hill, and the community members were just sitting up on the hill watching it like it was a Civil War reenactment.
That's always crazy.
And then I remember my buddy Abe Dental and we grabbed. They're like, all right, let's win hearts and minds, right? And so we take our helmets off and we grab beans and blankets from this fucking trailer, and we just like come into town. I have a photo of that somewhere. I should give it to you for this, but we're walking into town holding beans and blankets, right after this gunfight, and everyone came back in and we just talked to them. It was just this really surreal experience, having just done combat like that, and now it's like, okay, now we're going to be kind and shake hands.
Hello, everyone.
Yeah, hello. We're not bad people. Yeah.
Yeah, it is crazy. It is crazy. Yeah, Afghanistan is a different world altogether, and I've said it a lot on here. You can't really understand it unless you've been there, because it's so medieval. It's so like just so set back in time, but with the occasional like digital signals that they can get on their cell phone digital plan.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Like they're shitting in anywhere on the ground in a hole. I was
just gonna say that. I can't remember. I remember being in a firefight and we're looking. And I'm like stepping in it. I thought it was mud, and I looked. I'm like, oh, there's dog shit. Oh wait, that's not dog shit. That's people shit. And we're stepping in it.
I remember just you'd see a dude walking down the street, and he would just stop and kind of lift his man dress up a little bit and take a shit, throw some sand on his ass, and keep going. You're like, damn, dude.
Yeah.
Wow.
Chafing, bro.
Yeah, it's a different environment for sure. So then Iraq, where it's especially Ramadi, where it's super urban. I mean, obviously there's remote places in Iraq as well, but Ramadi,
I was surprised at that, almost like the exact opposite. I was like, wow, this is really like urban. They're watching fucking Twister as we're going in to do a set in for an ambush. There's a family watching the movie Twister with Bill Paxton, and it's like, what the fuck? Watching music videos of of something from the Middle East, and then the next one is like a Green Day video on their MTV.
Yeah.
And then there's like Holler Back Girl by Gwen Stefani,
It's definitely not as hardcore in the Islam world like Afghanistan was.
No, that was totally different. Completely different.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if you've seen, now they've completely like banned music. They've removed women from society essentially.
How expected.
I can't believe that happened.
Yeah, what happened?
Was it weird, being in a city like Ramadi, and you mentioned earlier being on top of like a bank and stuff like that, being on top of that 8-story building. Isn't it weird that you do that kind of thing? You're like, oh yeah, I was just on this 8-story building with my machine gun set up, and like it's like I know what you're talking about, but sometimes I think that because we understand it, we just kind of talk about it like it's whatever. But like an average person was probably like, wait, what? They're setting up a machine gun nest on top of a building, and that's so crazy to just even imagine.
It's weird, and I think you talked about it on a podcast recently, one of your other ones, about like going back to normal or civilian life, how unprepared we really are. Because it's like the best thing I can say, the best way to compare combat is to a drug, and like once you get a hit of it, it's like, oh, especially when you're mentally prepped for it, you'll never be truly prepared for it, but once you're primed for it, and you experience it and you survive it, it's like, well, I want more of that, because that's just like insane survival feeling. And so like the ease of going into places, setting up like a machine gun spot, or going in and into a house and realizing, okay, there's no threat here, we're not going to kill everyone, right? We're gonna put our gun down and get to the next place, and going from that to like normal life behind a desk in the real world, it's something that is hard to describe, and it's hard to let go. And I think, I've been out of the Marine Corps now for, 18 years, 17 years, something like that. And I still feel like the time in the Marine Corps was the longest point in my life, and the most fond memories of my life. A lot of them are from that. And it's not like I'm living in that and wishing for that back, but it's such a life-changing experience in combat that it's hard to, even after having been a firefighter, as a firefighter full-time for 7.5 years, and it doesn't do the same as combat.
See, I would have assumed like being a firefighter or like being a police officer where you're dealing with stuff every day. It's not like a combat. Like the Marine Corps, people kind of dog on police officers and like, oh, they don't know what they're doing. And then, military would be better to do something. I'm like, hold on. Like the military trains a lot and then you go deploy and then you come back and you don't deploy for a little while. So you get like decompression periods. Those guys are out there, guys and girls are out there doing it every day. Like there is no time off, like months off, a year off, and then back into it, So that's kind of surprising to hear that. I mean, I guess it's never going to be to that same level because combat's combat. Hunting another person is just, that's the ultimate.
Well, that's
game,
the thing,
right?
and that's what I'm speaking to, because there are the stressors of firefighting and law enforcement are there. The day-to-day, you can't really break from that. I wouldn't discredit that, and I hope that didn't come off as I was downplaying it.
No way.
But the difference is killing someone else that's trying to kill you is, once you've done that, I feel like there's nothing more rewarding in life, because it's like, hey, I survived.
Yeah.
And it was almost. Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say I've described it as a game before, and I'm like, it's the ultimate game, and it sounds fucked up to say that, but that's what it is. And you are, and like we had mentioned earlier, actually, I think this was from the previous conversation as well. I think this whole thing part. I say it's like a game because that's just kind of the mentality you get in, but it's the most serious game you'll ever play because you're literally putting your life on the line. And your opponent is trying to kill you.
Yep. And
it could come anytime, anywhere, and you have to be ready for that. And the mentality of having to have that kind of mentality all the time, hyper vigilant. Obviously, you come down a little bit when you're on the FOB or you're on whatever. But, I mean, I was in Sangin. You were talking about being in Sangin. Even being on the FOB, dude, we'd hear IEDs go off outside, or a car bomb go off or something, and you're like, shit, do we need to get our gear ready? Like, is something about to happen? Because there's never any like safe time, and it is really difficult to go from something which is so serious. And I think people on the outside sometimes think that the military takes like killing someone like as a lackadaisical kind of thing, like, oh well. And everyone I ever met, it was very much, no one joked about it. It wasn't, I mean, you joke about some stuff, but it wasn't like, it was very much serious business is what I'm getting at. And, you mentioned earlier how you respected the Taliban as fighters. That's the kind of mentality that I think true professional war fighters have, is you're not going in and joking them and stuff. But to wrap what I'm saying is, it's such a serious thing. When you get out, everything else just seems so unserious. And it's hard to empathize with people that are making a big deal or getting upset about something that seems so trivial. Like, what are you even talking about? Yeah. Like, who cares, dude? Like, who cares? And I've been told by women that I've dated since then that I come off as cold-hearted sometimes. And I'm like, it's hard, man. It's hard not to be like, what are you crying about? Like,
especially when you like literally laugh about it. It's like, are you fucking serious right now? It's like I'm beside myself to a point that I can't even control the laughter that needs to come out with what you are complaining about right now. I'm not saying like specifically my wife or anything, but just like someone in general. Especially with, you see stuff on social media now with how divided we are as a country, and then you have these fucking same people that are blowing up and losing their fucking minds over an event. But they're calling for war against the other party. And it's like, do you not see what you're saying? You are not mentally prepared to go to war. And you cannot speak on any, you would be destroyed in it mentally, And
it's just, I don't know. It's for people that haven't been there, it's just not, you can't understand it. And that's not a bad thing. No. Honestly, that's probably a good thing. Like you shouldn't. I don't want anyone I know or care about to have to go through some crazy traumatic event to be like, Same. Yeah, see, now you understand.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't want a told you so moment. I don't.
Yeah, like it's better that way. I don't say that as a judgment, like you weren't there, man. It's more like I'm glad you weren't. I'm glad you don't have to deal with that, but also understand where I'm coming from. And the other thing too, where I come off as cold-hearted to people sometimes, is I do news. I have my news page, Former Action News.
Yeah.
So I'm constantly just immersed in the worst stuff. I'm not looking for the worst stuff, but the worst stuff is what gets posted.
Yep.
And seeing all this crazy stuff happen all the time really makes you understand what people really are.
Yep.
And when things happen that, things happen out in the real world, it's just like, oh yeah, of course they did that. Of course those people did that because that's who they are. And I think some people don't have that kind of understanding. I mean, I don't know. It's tough, man. It's tough. Like I try to be empathetic a lot of times, and I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, but it's just tough sometimes where you're like, dude, what is the big deal? Like, what are we talking about right now?
Yep. I mean, and you get the same, going back to like tying in the law enforcement and firefighting end of it, you're seeing that whole end of the world. You're seeing the armpit, of the toilet of what exists in the world. And when you're inundated with that day after day after day, it does take a toll,
Yeah.
Because as a firefighter, we want, it's like, okay, we want to fight fire and we're mentally trained for that. But also that means that someone is losing something important to them. So, they're losing a house, they're losing a car, they're losing someone in their life. And so it's this weird juxtaposition of what you're craving to do for your job is also the worst day of someone's life, potentially,
Yeah.
And so it's a really weird line to be walking as you talk to people. It's like, oh yeah, we had a really good fire, it was a good fire, and then you realize as you're talking about it, it was like, oh yeah, they lost their entire house, and their dog died.
Yeah, it's definitely different. Firefighters can talk to each other about it like that was crazy, and they want to be on the big fire and stuff. No, I totally get it.
Same concept though. It's like you can laugh and joke about it, but it's a way of healing in a sense.
And you want to do your job. That's your job. You don't want to be going around freaking reviving fentanyl addicts all day long, which is what happened. Yeah. What firefighting
which is what it was. 90%, 95%, I think, of our calls were medical because we all had to be at least EMTs, and so we were running fire medic rigs, and it was something else. But the going to that from combat, it's weird because I found myself, and I think there's a lot of guys that have been in combat and then go to firefighting or law enforcement, and it's like, yeah, I can handle myself in stress. Mm-hmm. And you quickly realize that it's not like when you're exposed to so much combat at a young age, as we did in Ramadi and then Helmand, and it's like everything else in life seems kind of boring, and I think trying to find peace with the boring is the hard part for a lot of us, and find peace in just existing and trying to make sense of what life is now, that you're not living 1,000 miles an hour and craving that next hit of life or death situation. And so that it took me a long time to get through that, like to try to stop seeking out those hits of adrenaline.
Yeah, I would do that same thing. When I was in college, I would wait till the last minute possible to start writing a paper.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I know I can finish it. And it was not even I wasn't like, this is what we're going to do. We're going to wait till the last second. It was just these mental, I don't know.
You just knew it. You just knew you could do it. Yeah.
Yeah. And dude, literally one time I turned my paper in at 11:59 p.m. It was 1 minute before. I'm like, come on, baby, upload, And I'm like, what am I doing? This is so dumb. And I would do well on the papers and stuff like that. But I was just like, I realized I'm putting myself under this fake pressure because I needed pressure. I was like, I'm so, I got out as a JTAC and I was so used to operating under that pressure and going from that to advertising, which is what my degree was in, journalism and advertising. It's just, the adrenaline's there's no adrenaline there.
I went to business management, so it's no different. It's like
I actually started in business management, and I was like, I did one semester, and I was like, dude, fuck this. All roads lead to some cubicle somewhere, and that's when I switched to journalism and advertising. I've
always thought that would have been a great industry or good place to be, because it is. Journalism's never going to be the same day, back to back. You're going to have something. The
thing with journalism now is, one, you don't need a degree. Two, I don't know. You're likely not going to find a job in journalism. Unless you just have good connections, you're not going to find a job in journalism like a traditional job. And if you do, you're probably not going to get the pay that you think you're going to get. Yep. Really, as a modern journalist, the best ones are out there doing it themselves. They're self-funded, and at least at the beginning, and then they start doing crowdfunding or they, some sponsors or whatever. But there's a lot of people that spend time going to these different protests. Julio Rosas is a good one. He's been on the show a couple times. Marine reservist who's also a journalist who goes to all the riots and stuff. You know, you have to do something like he did where you have to go out and build it. You can't, it's not a traditional job where you're going to get out and like, okay, so-and-so is going to pick you up and you're going to, you know, this is the job you're going to do. And if you want to be on air talent, and they even tell you this in college, they're like, if you want to be like the news anchor on TV, the reality is you have to have a certain look to you. If you're kind of ugly, your teeth are kind of fucked up, like you're just not going to be on air. You're not going to be on air talent. And if you do, it's going to be some podunk fucking town in like Iowa, and you're going to be there forever. You know,
that's hilarious.
It's just like, that's journalism. You know, I knew a girl who was trying to get a job here in San Diego as a news anchor, but she had just gotten her degree, and it was like, no, dude, you got to go out to the fucking doldrums somewhere and spend some time in some little town, you know, earning your chops.
Quite literally like Anchorman.
Exactly. Yeah, they send
do
you
the
out.
news the squirrel news.
Yeah, they send you. It's exactly what it is. All those little local town, like, hey, we're at the Covered Bridge Festival this week. You know, like you got to go do that stuff for like 2 or 3 years, and then you can get picked up into a more major market, and then you try to go national. That's just the whole. But anyways, no, I would not recommend anybody don't do journalism. The only reason real quick, I'll finish here.
Yeah.
The only reason I did journalism was because at SDSU, the journalism program has 3 splits in it. So you can do journalism, straight journalism and PR, or journalism and advertising. And I did journalism and advertising so that when I graduated, I could apply for journalism jobs and say I had a degree in journalism, or I could apply for jobs at ad agencies and say I had a degree in advertising. That was the only reason I even did it that way.
That makes sense. You're broadening it, right? So
yeah, but the fire service, I mean, I always thought that would have been a cool job. I think, you know, the wildland firefighters, the hot shots. I used to love, like when I was a kid, reading about hot shots and stuff, doing those things. You know, but I think with the city fire, were you city fire? Or?
Yeah, I was the city of St. Paul, so the capital of Minnesota.
Okay, yeah, so that's a bigger one there. So for those, that's what it ends up being, right? You end up doing a lot of like helping old people that fell down and broke their hip, or someone's ODing again. You know, that's what it becomes. You know, it becomes
it starts wearing on you when you start going to those the calls of like somebody's ODing again, and like the whole crew shows up and we see who it is, and you're like, fuck, like
you're like, Bobby, it's the second time this week. What are you doing?
Well, part of you, like, you get worn out, you know, and you like think about it, and you look at everyone else on your crew, and they're thinking the same thought. It's like, do we have to revive them? Do we, you know? It's just a weird, you know, a burnout, you know, and you get put in these crazy situations like that, but it's still, even with all that, you know, the combat end of it is always like, I need more, you know. It's like that fire wasn't hot enough. I didn't feel like I got in the shit bad enough, you know. And it's this weird mental place to be in, you know. And I want to touch before go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Before I forget about it, because I think it's something that I didn't realize until much later getting out, was the amount of balls it takes to be a combat photographer. We talk about like journalism, because we had in that one firefight I was talking about where we had my buddy get shot, we had a combat photographer from the Marine Corps there, and you know, some staff sergeant, he came along, and he had his DSLR camera and his rifle, and there were points in the firefight where, like, at one point an RPG hit the tire of my truck and it spun out. Somehow it didn't blow up. The RPG bounced off my tire, popped it. It spun out and right at his feet. And he just like took his camera and snapped a photo. It's in that article he did, that whole thing was in Soldier of Fortune magazine in June of 2008. But the thing that I was just beside myself on, and mad respect for anyone that's in combat photography, is he would be shooting his camera in 1 minute and then have his rifle up because there were targets in the next. And he's a Marine just like the rest of us. But I remember thinking, like, damn, that's a good job to be in, because you still get to get some. And also you have a job once you get out of the military.
Yeah,
you know.
I actually just interviewed a guy named Kaoshan Yi a couple episodes ago. He was a combat. He's still in, actually. He's now a chief warrant officer. But he was a junior guy, and he talked about he went to the Air Wing in Okinawa, and then he got sent over to, I want to say it was 1-5. I think he was there for Alpha 1-5. He was attached. He wasn't just attached for like a mission or two. He was attached for the entire deployment to one company. I think Alpha for their Afghan deployment.
No shit. Okay.
Yeah, so he did the entire deployment and just rotated through squads and stuff like that. And I'm with you. I think that job is, look, back in the rear, most jobs suck. That one's like every other job. There's probably a ton of like retirement ceremonies and changes of command and all that kind of crap you got to deal with. But you also, with that job, you have the opportunity to see so many different aspects of the Marine Corps, because you can get, I mean, when I was with the MEU, our combat camera guys on the MEU, they'd go out with recon on missions and stuff like that to shoot photos. They'd go out with the infantry guys. They'd go, you know, I think never mind. I was going to say I think one of them was jump qualified, but that's not correct. There was just all these different aspects of the Marine Corps that, you know, they're getting eyes on because of that job. That was definitely a job I would have done, you know, while I was in.
Yep. Yeah, that would have been something knowing what I know now about it, and then like knowing the process of getting out, you know, you can't really go be a JTAC in any civilian job.
No.
Maybe air traffic control somehow.
Don't even qualify for that. It's a whole different process. Yeah.
So
CCTs, the Air Force CCTs, most people think that they're all JTACs. They're actually air traffic controllers. They're all certified by the FAA as air traffic controllers. That's their whole job, is to secure an airfield and then run the airfield. And then on top of that, some of them are JTACs. Not all of them are JTACs as well, which was interesting because I thought they were all JTACs and all that. But yeah, no, as a JTAC, man, there's not a lot of only contracting jobs. I've had a shit ton of contract offers, and I've turned them all down because I'm like, man, that sounds like good money, but that means it's probably in a real shithole. You know? Did you consider that when you got out, was contracting at all?
I did, yeah. I had looked into it. My wife, so I had extended to go to MARSOC. I had to extend 5 months, just over 5 months, and my wife told me that if I were to re-enlist, which they offered me like $90,000 tax-free, and I think I was going to get meritorious staff, which I ended up picking up in the IRR anyway, but I would have got meritorious staff at that point, and then $90,000 tax-free, and I would have been a single man at that point, because my wife said, if you re-enlist, I'm going to leave you, but she was okay with me extending to do one more deployment. And so when I got out of there, I owed it. You know, she had waited for me for 4.5 years at that point, and the contracting opportunities that were there, you know, she wouldn't have been a happy camper with me just being gone. And then in the middle of all that, her brother died in a car accident, and he was best friends with like my brother. You know, we grew up together. And so that was a couple months after I got out of the Marine Corps, and being away for all of that would have been
not
just
good.
a fucking terrible thing. So as much as I wanted to, and I knew the money was there, I didn't. And the one contract I was about to get on, I ended up getting the job for the fire department, like the offer, and started that. And so that was like, okay, I need to do this because it's a better fit. So
yeah, and you get to be home.
Yep.
Yeah, for
kind
sure.
Of.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. You get, what do you do? Like one or 2 days on, and then like 2 or 3 days off.
Yeah, we did every other day for a week, and then we got 4 days off, and then we did every other day for a week. It was a 24-hour shift, so every other day, and then I got 6 days off. So
damn, every other day for 24 hours. Yeah.
I mean, it gets to be a lot when you're running like a number of calls.
Yeah.
You know, in that period. So
yeah, I mean, yeah. The contracting gigs sound great, and for some people they are worth it. But one of my reasons for getting out was like I want to spend more time with my kid. You know, so it doesn't really make sense to like start flying to Africa or flying over to Ukraine. You know, if I'm trying to say one of my reasons is spend more time. But so let's talk about MARSOC. Was that like the early days?
That was I was in the first ever Bravo company that existed.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was cool. It was awesome, man. It was the best deployment. You talk to anyone, you know, see like Randall Parks. He's on a lot of the podcasts.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. He talks a lot about it. It was the best deployment I think any of us could have ever experienced. You know, minus the 2 guys that got wounded. But that was like they're still living a life. You know, and are healthy. And it's just like this incredible experience having the amount of combat we saw there and having the minimal casualties that we did. So
how did you, I mean, I'm surprised they would let you extend and go to MARSOC and not make you re-enlist, but I guess that's early on. They were probably just looking for people at the time, right?
They were looking for people, and so the way I got in was we were getting out, and I was supposed to be like done in less than a year at that point or whatever it was, and I talked to my wife and said I just need to kind of do this for like retribution for myself, and it was a really cool opportunity. And so I had to sign a page 11 in my SRB stating that they didn't have an INDOC, but my INDOC was passing Infantry Squad Leader School, Infantry Squad Leaders course. And so a couple of my buddies and I signed up and did that, and one of them had a newborn baby and didn't pass it, so he had he got kicked out of it, and then we went right from there into a shooting package, and then right into like company exercises and like random training, and we were actually training so fucking much that my wife never saw me, and we lived up in Mission Viejo at the time, and she's just like, I'm gonna move home with my mom, my parents. So
okay,
I was like, okay, but we ended up doing that, and that was a crazy awesome experience. I mean, we had guys we were like I think we were initially set up to be a trailer platoon, and then right as they did that, they were like, we're not doing that anymore, so you guys are your own entity. And so we had a lot of young Marines that hadn't deployed ever, let alone to combat. And then we had the first platoon that had a lot of like force recon guys, and then younger recon guys that was some of their first deployment as well. And so as a company, it was a really cool experience to be like building what MARSOC was and figuring out where we sit with everything, together. And we had initially been told we were going to go to Samara, Iraq, and it was like basically they're like, it's not going to be a good mission, guys. It's going to suck. It kind of be like a suicide mission. We're like, okay. And then let's do it. Sweet. And I think a part of that too was we were on the heels of, I think, Fox Company, who had that investigation going for all the shit happening in Afghanistan then. And so we didn't even know where we were standing as a battalion and as a company. Like, are they going to let us go to combat? And then our platoon, my squad got tasked with doing a FID mission, so Foreign Internal Defense in the Philippines. And we did a month-long training program for their like DEA and their like special forces and everything. And it was like a shoot package training kind of thing. And so we did that, and then after we got done with that, we found out that we were going to be deployed to Afghanistan. And so it was like, okay, like, let's do it, and all us senior Marines are like, let's get a star on our combat action ribbon.
I'm gonna look so cool.
Like, it's gonna look so cool. That's like the first fucking thought we all have, like a bunch of fucking idiots.
The stuff we do.
Yeah. We already established we don't get paid shit, so it's like, let's look for the medal.
I made a post a few months ago, and I just took a picture of my ribbons and put them on my former Action Guys Instagram page.
Yeah.
And I put on it like the quote from Napoleon that a soldier will do. It was something like, a soldier will do amazing things for a colored piece of cloth, or something along those lines.
Yeah.
And I wasn't necessarily celebrating or trying to show off like it. For whatever reason, that picture went around a lot. Like, that was actually a really popular post, and I wasn't like me trying to celebrate what awards I had earned. It was almost like it was more of a the cost, like the cost of being away, losing friends. Like, that's what, to me, that's what I see. You know what I'm saying? When I look at different awards and stuff, I'm like, you're looking at the cost of, 12 years in the Marine Corps, 12 years. Of those 12 years, I spent at least 25% of that either overseas or on a ship somewhere.
Yeah.
And then let's count in the training for all those deployments, and let's count in, all the other stuff that you have to do. So how much time was I gone? And that's kind of how I look at the ribbons. And it's funny because you're right. When you're in, literally, anytime everybody has to wear chucks, everybody has to wear their Charlie uniforms, everyone's walking around with a resume on their chest.
Yep.
And, and you don't want to be the guy that's only got like 2 ribbons or whatever. He hasn't done anything, It's such a weird world to live in.
It was interesting too on that note with like going to MARSOC, coming from, you know, the recon guys have a chip on their shoulder. The younger ones did. I would say that the guys who had a combat experience or had deployments under them, like we didn't really have any shit that we got from them, but it was all these like younger guys. And at the time we didn't know any different, right? Until we went to, I think we had the Marine Corps ball, and some of us went out and we were in our blues, you know, and I remember seeing some of the guys that were some of the biggest shit talkers from the other platoon, and I'm like, you boot fucking bitch. Like, you know, we're like, and it's their resume, right? It's like, I'm standing there with like the combat action ribbon from Ramadi and have you know, all the other just like basic deployment shit, and it's like he hasn't even fucking deployed. He's been in training that entire time, just like I was told I would be, you know. And so it was just like, it was an interesting dynamic to see that. And it's in a resume. You know,
I saw that same thing. I think when when I worked with the recon guys on the Mew, the junior guys were definitely more like, you know, more bravado, like, you know. Whereas the senior guys who had all done like deployments to Afghanistan and all that stuff were very much way more laid back, and they were like, it does us no good to be douchebags to everybody. Like, these are all the people that are supporting us. So why would I be a douchebag to the supply guy when I could go be friends with the supply guy and maybe he can hook me up later on if I need something?
Exactly.
You know, the maturity of the professional warfighter.
Yeah.
I think that still exists. It is. I mean, you can't hide from it. And obviously ribbons and stuff don't mean everything, but it definitely gives you an understanding. Like when someone's talking about something and you're like, dude, you haven't even been, don't tell me about the Mew. You haven't even been on a ship yet. Like, what are you even talking about right now? You know, it's like, it doesn't even have to be combat. It could just be other stuff, you know?
No.
But yeah, it's such a weird world. It's just funny. It's just funny when you do walk around with your uniform on and how you just see everybody judging each other and just
sizing up a little bit. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. It's just a funny world. The military is such a good time, in good way. I mean, there's bad times as well, but it's just it's a different world to live in, and you're constantly being judged for something. You know, are you fit enough? Are you fast enough? Are you, you know, do you have enough like training? Do you have, you know, everything is being judged, and that makes you a better person a lot of times. And I think you don't really understand that until you leave it. Right. And then you see how everybody else just doesn't give a fuck. You know,
well, that goes back to what you talked about before, like having your experience of working in the real world before going to the military, I'm sure gave you some insight as to how things were done better there than in the real world, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Some things in the real world I learned, I was like, wow, why don't we do this in the military? And then some things I'm like, wow, you guys really need, like, this is basic stuff. What are you guys doing over here? The organization is crazy. I want to go, I do want to back up and talk to you a little bit more about the whole MARSOC thing.
Yeah.
So there was no selection. This was like the first. What was it like? I want to know, so you mentioned Fox Company, Fred Galvin. He's been on the show a couple times. He's told his side of the story, and you know, they've all been exonerated and all that. What was it like at the time to be over at MARSOC and hearing this news and reading these stories, and like, you know, was it like, no way they did this? Or, I mean, what was even going through your guys' mind?
Concern for what our mission was going to be in the future, because you know, I was investigated for a shooting in Ramadi. I shot an old man, and I got investigated for it. I got cleared of it, and knowing where my mental state was at the time, and knowing the situation, the scenario, when I heard what was going on with Fox Company, I'm like, fuck, not again. Like, they're in war. Let our boys do war, and they shouldn't be murdering people. And I couldn't imagine, none of us could imagine that they would just be like, just mindlessly gunning down people, you know. And so it's always like, okay, how's the news reporting on this, and what's the truth? And I felt just bad. I felt really shitty for the guys that were under the gun at that point, having been there myself. Not as high profile, but just being in that situation, you feel a little betrayed, you know. And it's just like I think our hearts were out for them as far as like, God, like I can't imagine that they'd be doing that, and if they did, like that's between them and God, you know. But there was a lot of questioning of like, okay, what is our mission going to be? Are we even? There was at one point they were like, I don't even think you guys are going to be allowed to deploy. And so for me, I'm like, fuck, I just extended and did all this shit, and now we're not going to do anything because something that someone else did, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it was a lot of unknown, and we were just trying to focus on what our mission was. You know, we were training for deploying on a MU at the time, and we thought we were going to Iraq. And so that's where our minds were, and that's where I was just really focused on our young guys and like, hey guys, we need to keep our head in the game because we're going to be doing some crazy shit if we go to combat. So
yeah, no, for real. Yeah, it's so weird. I mean, you have such a better understanding because you know you went through the entire training package and everything those guys did, so you know, like, hey, these guys are pros. Like, these are pro shooters. Like, these aren't.
Yeah,
I mean,
we all had to do.
Go ahead. I was gonna say, explain the shooting package and compare that to how much you shot while you were an infantryman.
So I will say, as an infantryman, because I did 3 deployments. I did Ramadi was my first one, and I did the 31st MU. I was a team leader there for 31st MU, and we were a boat company, so we did all the boat shit in Coronado and everything, and that was a great experience. And then went to MARSOC, and I was a squad leader, team leader, squad leader, however you want to say it, and I stood in as platoon sergeant, and like, to shoot a battalion's worth of ammo in a day for a platoon, that's MARSOC. You just shoot and you shoot and you shoot and you shoot so much you don't even want to fucking shoot anymore. You just got to shoot the rounds so you don't have to bring home, or you can't return the rounds. You don't want to have to bring rounds back to the ammo depot, because then they won't give you as much the next time. And so we're like trying to do cyclic rate on the cheesy poof M203 rounds, just to get rid of the fucking rounds, and so like that was MARSOC. We just shot. And the shooting package we had to do was I think you were allowed 2 flyers and then you were kicked out of the unit. And so that's in the training. So you're training how to shoot, and you have to do the square base shoot, where you're just doing like the different lanes of fire, walking and all that stuff, and then you go into the shoot house. And in that entire month or month and a half of training, you were only allowed 2 flyers. And so there were guys that had 1 flyer, and if they had a second one, they were out. And so we'd have to sit down, and that was stress. You talk about stress on guys. Some of these junior Marines are trying to prove themselves and not fuck it up, and they have 1 flyer, and you're like, okay, guys, we can't be the guy that gets sent home.
You want to explain to people what a flyer is for those that may not know what you're talking about?
A flyer, I'm trying to see if I have a target down here. I don't. It's when you have any round that's outside of wherever your target is. So I think we trained on like 5-inch, or whatever it was, like chest targets, and then you train on that one, and then you went to I think you had like an 8-inch or a 10-inch circle when you actually came to qual day. So you trained in a smaller amount of space to have your bullets land in. That way, when it came down to the actual qual, you had an opportunity to not fuck it up. But if anything was outside of that target, that's a flyer. So
yeah, it's not even just missing like a paper silhouette target altogether. It's missing that 8-inch circle within the target.
That was on the flat bay. I'm trying to remember if we did, when you did the shoot house, if you had to, I can't remember if anything on the body. So if my body was a silhouette and you had a round hit like here, I can't remember if that would have counted. But it was definitely, if the paper was here and you could see the round on the paper, that would be a flyer.
Yeah.
And you'd be out, So, and there's something completely different with rifle companies. You're not doing the reps on line companies. You're not doing the reps in rooms. I was clearing fucking rooms by myself with a saw in Ramadi for real, having had no experience in doing that. But that's just the way it was, right? And so I had a very big appreciation for what MARSOC brought when we'd get training from those guys, because those guys, a lot of them were from Force Recon, and they had years of experience, and they're teaching us how to be better warriors. And when you're standing there in a room and someone's barrel's like in front of your face and they're shooting this way while you're shooting this way, and you're feeling the concussion and just experiencing that, it's something that you get to experience in training in a controlled environment and not your first time in real combat, and it takes that edge off so you can think on what your true mission is. So it was a really great experience, and I feel very honored and fortunate to have had it.
Yeah.
I've said it a couple times on other podcasts, but it's like I've had a great, for my 4.5 years in, I felt like I had a wild, full circle almost Marine Corps experience where we had heavy urban combat Ramadi. We had 31st MEU as a boat company. We're fucking Marines. We're a littoral organization. So I had that experience. And then we did urban fighting in Afghanistan as well as a FID mission in the Philippines. So it was just like, it was a whirlwind.
Yeah.
And,
no, dude, you did a lot in 4.5 years. Like, you did a lot. I mean, the fact that, that's tough to even, like, if you would have stayed in even longer, it would have been tough to replicate. I don't know. I mean, I guess if you would have stayed at MARSOC, you would have just been so busy.
I would have been. A lot of the guys that I was with got really fucked up after that, and I don't know. I think I had this gut feeling, and it's weird. I had this gut feeling that had I stayed in, I probably would have got killed. I just had this feeling, and it's a weird feeling. I say that because my friend Matt Canan, he told our squad leader a couple days before he died, he was like, "I'm going to die here," and he did. A couple days later in an IED. It's not even. We were just sitting. He was sitting right next to me, so it was like. And then I found out later that my other friend Marty Mortensen, who died in that same explosion, told his sister, "I'm not going to come back from this one," and that was that was both of their third deployment to combat. And so I looked at that in my, I held on to that when I had that feeling when they were like, "Hey, do you want to stay with MARSOC?" And I was like, "No." Like, I had this feeling, and I can't prove it, right? History's, but I'm here now doing this shit, and
yeah. I mean, staying there is obviously, you get what you ask for. Yeah. When you're deciding to stay there, what am I asking for? I'm asking for a lot of combat rotations and actual combat. Not a lot of sitting on the fob and hanging out waiting for your patrol and maybe get hit by an IED. You're getting into some actual stuff. Depending on your type of deployment, obviously they do different deployments and stuff. But, yeah, I mean, it's such a I don't think there's anything wrong with that, making that decision, being like, I got my fill. I did it at 12 years. Yeah. Everybody was like, "You're 12 years? Only 8 more years." And I'm like, dude, do you know what can happen in 8 years?
Yeah.
I'm like, the people that tell me that are the people that are like on their first or second deployment, and I'm like, bro, this is my 5th, from 2009 to 2016. This is my 5th deployment, and I'm just kind of done with it,
Yep.
And, man, when you have one of those jobs where you are constantly rotating on deployments and training, everyone knows it wears on themselves and it wears on their families if they have families, but you kind of don't care because you're having so much fun.
Yep.
And it's
and you're there for the guys
say
with
that.
you, like the guys that you're there. You're like, they rely on me, and you believe it. I believed it.
I'm good at my job. I enjoy doing my job. Everyone around me, I enjoy them. You go and do these training exercises, and I always told people, I'm like, being a JTAC and then being a JTAC evaluator, I was like, it was like being a ghetto rock star. They're flying me to shitty places across the country, Yuma, Destin, Florida, go to these places. And I'm getting a shitty hotel that's paid for, and I'm getting a little per diem or whatever, and I'm going out and doing some controls and doing whatever. And then I was like, it's these experience, but I loved it. We'd go out to Gila Bend or Gila Bend, however you want to pronounce it. We'd go out there and just spend all day cooking in the desert, doing controls with A-10s and F-35s and whatever coming through, and then go back to the little Air Force hotel thing they had on the little, I don't even want to call it a base. It's like an expeditionary airfield. And they had this bomb grill, and we'd send some guys to get some taco meat, and we'd sit there and grill tacos, man, and have some beers. And then the next day you go out and do it again. And it was like, dude, this is awesome. Like, it was everything I wanted, and it's like, it's very easy to be like, I'm going to keep doing this.
Yep.
You know, and like, I know I should probably go home more. I know I should do, but you know, beer and tacos with my buddies, and then we go and blow stuff up.
Yeah.
How are you going to say no to that?
You can't do that in any other job. You know, there's nothing else. Rarely. You'd be bomb tech, I guess.
But that's the other thing too, is like when you get into that kind of job though, it's really fun, but sometimes you get what you ask for and it's time to go do the job for real. And then it becomes extremely dangerous. And there's a reason why there's a high bonus. There's a high turnover and there's a high casualty rate a lot of times. And these are dangerous jobs. EOD is another one. How long, you know, if you talk to a guy that's been in EOD for 20 years, guaranteed he knows multiple people that's been blown up, killed, not just blown up and injured, blown up and killed. You know, it's just, that's the nature of the beast. And just like we were talking before, when you were talking about going to Ramadi, you have this facade of safety, you know, of like, oh, I'm doing everything the right way. It's safe. We're doing it the right, you know, safe way, until it's broken, that is shattered by an event that you couldn't have even thought about, that, you know, now someone's dead. Now it's like, oh shit, this is a really dangerous job, you know. I don't know.
Yep, and that makes it, I think that's what makes it even harder. Like I appreciate you saying that, like, it's crazy how much I did in the Marine Corps, because at the time I felt like I hadn't done enough, right? And when I left, there were years, dude, like, that I felt like a coward for leaving MARSOC and for leaving the Marine Corps.
Why?
I felt
that's crazy.
I felt like I was a bitch. I didn't know who I was.
Oh,
like,
you couldn't handle it anymore? You had to leave?
Well, that's the thing. And no one ever said that. And that's the thing. Like, no one fucking said that. But I felt that. And I felt like all the eyes, it was like I was slated to have, I was put up for meritorious staff and then combat meritorious staff. And they're like, are you going to re-enlist? I'm like, no. And they're like, okay, we're going to give it to someone else. I said, that's great, you know. And having those, like, that recognition from some of my superiors and the people I respected, and then being like, I'm done after this, guys, I felt like a coward. And it sounds absurd to me now as a older adult, looking at like life and everything else and seeing these younger guys that are fucking go-getters, and it's like I would never think anyone was a coward that signed up to do anything for the military, right? But it's like reflecting on it in my own mentality at the time. I think I'm not alone in that, where you leave it and it's like this identity crisis. It's this, you know, I don't know who the fuck I am, but I'm not the same guy, and I'm kind of a bitch because some of my friends are still in, and I'm failing the team. And so, like, that constant feeling of like I failed everyone, even, you know, even though I did my part, that was a huge thing that I didn't expect to wear on me upon getting out. You know, I didn't expect that to be kind of rearing its ugly head the entire time.
I think part of that is probably because you didn't want to get out. You know, part of that is probably because you didn't want to leave yet. I didn't have those feelings. Accurate. I didn't have those. I was ready. I was done. I became that staff sergeant that's hanging around that they don't want hanging around because I'm almost out and I got nothing to lose by speaking my mind, you know? And they're just like, yeah, we don't need you here. You can go home, you know? Like, because I was like, this is dumb. What are we doing? You know, like, so my mentality, but I do understand what you're saying. And there's so many people. I've tried to say this on the podcast a lot. You cannot ever like judge your service against somebody else's. There's so many people that look back and they're like, well, so-and-so did this. And it's like, bro, everybody did more than somebody and less than somebody else. And, you know, a lot of that is timing, you know, a lot of that is whatever. If it just didn't work out for you. Now, if you purposely dodged deployments and stuff like that, now you feel bad for it. Well, you probably should. But if you had you know, it was that's just the timing and stuff. I mean, I knew guys that were in during the height of Iraq that didn't deploy because of one reason. I knew a guy who literally went all the way to Cherry Point to deploy, and they sent a duty van and picked him up and was like, you're not deploying, because they had one too many people on the roster because they had some additional reservists and stuff added, and reservists can't be cut from a deployment once they're added. So they had to cut an active duty guy. His family was there. He'd already said goodbye to them all and everything. Got all the way to Cherry Point, and then they sent a duty van to pick him up and be like, you're not deploying, bro, and brought him back. I couldn't believe it. I was like, he showed up at work a couple days later. I was like, what are you doing here? He's like, dude, you're not going to believe this. And then I think he was one of those guys that when he got out, he kind of felt like a piece of shit, you know, air quotes, because I never got to do my deployment. And it's like, dude, so what?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yep.
maybe, okay, I expect that you're not going to be giving deep thoughts on combat operations or whatever then. As long as you don't do that, then whatever. But if you know, who cares what you did? Like, it's just like, hey, man, if you want to get into heavy combat, you want to see this crazy stuff, and then it happens, and then you have these issues coming back to the real world, and you wouldn't want your family to go through that. It's like, dude, I don't want you to have to. I remember I was in Sangin, and I was emailing my buddy who was on MSG duty, and I was like, yeah, it's pretty crazy out here. And he's like, man, I'm the only one. You know, he emailed me. He's like, I'm the only one that of our friends that is not going to have a combat action ribbon. And I was like, bro, I almost got shot in the face the other day. Like, that wasn't cool. Like, fuck the ribbon, dude. I literally almost got shot in the face. Like, no, you know. But yeah, anybody that's, I even say people that didn't join. I've met a lot of people that were like, I wish I would have joined. You know, I really regret not joining. And even those people, to me, as long as you did something within your community, you're a positive person in your community, then good on you, man. Good on you. If you're a construction worker and you're building buildings and you're doing those kind of things, you're a plumber and you're taking care of your city's infrastructure, way more important than me going to Afghanistan and fucking battling out with the Taliban for 7 months at a time. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's way more important and way more impactful, impactful on our society every day. And if you're one of those people, you should not feel bad about not joining, because look at how many guys feel bad after we evacuated Kabul, you know, and the effect that had on people.
That's, I mean, 100%. Anyone that says to me, "Oh, I wish I should have joined," or I regret not joining, it's like, don't. Like, you did your part for society. Like, I hope, and the same thing goes for people that are like, "Oh, I've never seen as much stress as you." It's like, you know what, you have, because I think all of us have had our peak stress, right? And that's all we know. The thing about being a human is that we are resilient and we can push past, not push past, but get through that. It depends on the level of support that you need for that. But at the end of the day, my worst day on this earth is no different than someone who never served worst day on earth. It's still the worst day on earth. And, until you have something new to replace that, we're all living the same life in a sense. It's just that the perspective might be different. Doesn't mean that my worst day is any worse than yours. It's just that I have a different perspective on it,
Yeah, for sure. So. Yeah, man. Well, this has been a really interesting conversation. Honestly, we dabbled in some of the combat talk. We talked more about a bunch of other stuff. I mean, probably half and half. So I wouldn't mind having you back on again. We could probably get more into it later on. So
thank you.
Well, go ahead and plug your book and where people can find you on social media and stuff like that, and then we'll set something up.
Awesome. Yeah, I wrote the book called Counting on Death, and it's by Casemate Publishers. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, anywhere books are sold. It's on Audible as well. And I'm at Joshua Shores Official on Instagram and Facebook, and at Counting on Death for Twitter. I'm not on there as much, but I should probably change that. And you can also find my website is countingondeath.com, and it has info on the book and all the podcasts I've done, anything else. I'll put this one on there for people to be able to find it that way as well.
Oh, yeah, man. And I'll make sure to put all the links in the description so everybody can check those out. Make sure to go over and check out his website, check out his book. You can see my stuff, jkramergraphics.com, anglocoshop.com. Those are my websites. Former Action Guys, Former Action News. Crazy month on Former Action News. I hit a new 30-day record of 7.4 million views in the last 30 days, which is...
Damn, man. Congrats.
That's crazy. So... Really glad everybody's supporting the news page. Go check that out, and then really appreciate it, man. Really enjoyed having you on.
Thank you for the opportunity, and I definitely will take you up on coming back on at some point.